Good morning, everybody. My name is Pat Flowers, Minority Leader in the Senate, obviously. Here today for our weekly press availability, and thanks for joining us again. On the Senate side, we are still kind of slogging away on the budget and still behind, and even more behind on bills that we're addressing on the floor. Right now, or based on yesterday's count, the House had debated 178 bills on the floor, and the Senate had debated 71. So we are less than half in terms of our progress compared to the House. So we've got a steep road ahead of us, and I'm concerned about what might not get addressed just because of deadlines. The bills we are seeing on the Senate side, as you've witnessed, are some of the most extreme partisan bills that we're going to see in this session. They're bills that undermine freedoms, that take away our right to privacy, our freedom of religion, and those are right alongside the bills that are trying to make our courts more political and pave the way for impeaching judges that are protecting your constitutional rights. So needless to say, we're really concerned about the direction that so far we're going in the Senate and the kinds of bills that we're addressing. We don't believe that that's what Montanans want. That's not why they sent us here. We have yet to see a tax bill on the floor, yet we heard over and over and over again how important property taxes were from our constituents. Where are those bills? We haven't seen a Medicaid bill. They are working their way through the House, and we'll probably hear more about that from the minority leader in the House. But we need to get to work and get focused on what we know are the priorities for Montanans, and I'm still hopeful that's going to happen soon, but it certainly hasn't happened yet. And with that, I'll turn it over to the minority leader in the House.
Good morning, everybody. Katie Sullivan, a minority leader for the House Dems. Appreciate y'all coming every time. Thank you for the opportunity to chat. The House passed our priority health care bill with bipartisan support, House Bill 185. This is Medicaid continuous eligibility for kids age 0 to 5. This is allowing health insurance coverage for our most vulnerable population, and that's our infants, babies, and kids. So this is great news. We're really pleased, and we hope that this bill continues through the progress of the House and gets over to the Senate. Both of our major property tax relief bills, House Bill 154 and 155, made it out of tax committee. And around the same time, the governor has pushed his third income tax cut for the rich, and this is before property tax relief has even gone through. In terms of the governor's income tax bill, the way I see it is, if you're one of the governor's billionaire friends, you'll get a lot of benefit, but if you're a working Montanan, you're going to get very little benefit. This GOP plan was designed for the ultra wealthy. As I said, the vast majority of benefit going to the top, whereas we're focused on everyday working Montanans, and that's why we brought the property tax bills that we did that really focus on providing that great relief that people are asking for property taxes. We have still not seen Medicaid tax relief or housing bills on the House floor. They are moving through committee, but I think it does show where priorities are, again, similar to what Senator Flowers said, that we are seeing lots of other bills that are, I call it government intrusion into people's lives before we're seeing property tax, housing, and childcare. And I think that's unfortunate. And I hope Montanans see where these priorities lie for each party. But this week, we're putting the spotlight on education. We have introduced 12 education bills across both chambers. And so Representative Melissa Romano is going to take it away.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Supporting students, parents, and teachers is a top priority for Democrats because, in fact, 1 in 5 Montana House Democrats are educators. We know not only as teachers but as parents the challenges that our students face. And our state constitution gives all students a right to a free, quality public education. And that's why Montana Democrats are bringing 12 education bills to support our students, our parents, and our teachers this session. I have the honor to be carrying 5 of those bills, and I'm going to go into detail about one of those, and I'll just briefly talk about the others. One of the bills centers around early numeracy, and that had a great hearing, in fact, yesterday. So I can talk more about that, but the one I really want to spend a little bit of time on revolves around funding of 6th graders. So in fact, I don't want to age myself, but I was one of the first classes in Helena as a 6th grader to attend the middle school as a 6th grader. And over the last 35 years, we've seen that happen more and more, where today 98% of our 6th graders are served in a middle school setting or a junior high setting, but the funding is still at an elementary level. And so my bill seeks to increase the A and B funding for 6th graders to be funded at the secondary level, since they are getting instruction and getting courses at that level. So courses like CTE, culinary arts, woodworking, which all cost more money. And so this is a bill that would seek to fund them at the secondary level. The other bills I want to just briefly touch on are bills that help teachers stay in the classroom. I am running a bill called Montana's Best, which is bolstering educators' support and training, and that's House Bill 340. I'll be running a bill around food insecurity and making sure that our students are able to be fed. That's LC 1781. And then I also have a bill around students' mental health, which aids to add in student voice around what they think their school might need in terms of mental health, and that's LC 1780. Since the governorship changed hands in 2021, it's become a lot harder for teachers. There are a lot more barriers. It's a lot harder for public education in general. We're simply not funding education the way that students deserve. And when school funding doesn't keep up, kids fall behind. We are having to lay off teachers, consolidate classes, consolidate positions. We've seen it in the headlines across the state. And quite simply, kids are losing out because we aren't funding education the way we need to. You'll see Republicans pushing school privatization, subsidies for private schools, tax credits for donating. In fact, just last week, we saw the leaders of the House and the Senate attend a rally calling for school privatization, and that would be a disaster for our state. School privatization is not what we need. It's become a disaster in Arizona and in Texas. Texas has rejected it time and time again. Robust public schools with permanent, highly qualified teachers in every classroom is what works, and that's what Democrats seek to do and what we'll continue to fight for throughout the rest of the session.
All right.
Thanks, and I'm going to turn it over to Senator Novak.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I am Senator Sarah Novak, representing Senate District 36 out of the Anaconda and Butte areas. I am a lifelong educator, and I'm a parent of 3 kids in the K-12 system. We as Democrats are putting Montana's first by supporting our kids and investing in our kids as they are Montana's future. We need to take a hard look at the funding formula and determine what is working and where we need to go. The current formula is based largely on student count. So you take a little Class C size district that has 1 class per grade, they lose 5 fifth graders that move away, and they lose roughly $30,000. Yet they can't cut the teacher because they need to teach the rest of the fifth graders. We want to look at that. We want to look at the inflationary cap that is under statute capped at 3%. Democrats do support removing that inflationary cap. Special education, which is near and dear to my heart, is a large underfunded mandate from the federal government. Democrats support increasing state funding towards special education to help relieve some of that burden on local taxpayers. A good example of that is Representative Carlin's bill that seeks to fund 3 to 5-year-olds receiving special education services. Democrats support school choice as it's already a large option. What we do is we are adamantly opposed to diverting those funds for public schools to the private sector. Recruitment and retention of educators is critical. Montana is among the lowest in the nation for early career educator salaries, and we also support efforts to lower and stabilize those health insurance costs to help put more money in the paychecks of our educators so we can grow that pipeline and keep our teachers. Teachers need high quality, relevant professional development opportunities. They need to feel supported. Democrats support administrators, teachers, school staff, and local boards of trustees so that they can work collectively as a team to build the most comprehensive, cohesive school communities possible. Democrats are supporting continued efforts to engage students across the state in opportunities for Indian education and native language preservation, like those carried by my colleague, Senator Wendy Boy, who has been a longtime champion of that. Schools, as Representative Romano said, are really pressured with mental and behavioral health needs of our students. Licensed professionals are in short supply, specifically in rural Montana, and we need to ensure that schools have resources to meet the students' needs. Finally, we stand firm as Democrats and believe that every child deserves the same robust opportunities, regardless of where they live or attend school. Expansion of programs like CTE and courses focused on getting students career ready are a priority. Opportunities for work-based learning, such as job placement, internship, industry recognized credentials, not only gets kids engaged, but it gives them interesting careers and a good start on that path for what's next after school. It's good for industry and it's good for the economy. Advanced coursework opportunities such as AP courses or dual credit are an incredible way to engage our students and save them and their parents lots of money as they have future college expenses, and can take some time off of that. I'm proud to sponsor legislation to support the growth of these advanced opportunities for our students.
All right, I'm going to open it up to general questions or education questions. What do you guys got?
Katie,
Yes, sir.
I'm curious. I'd asked Pat this too. He looked at the MIPA bills that have been proposed by Republican leadership, and I'm curious about a couple things, whether they really do address some of the concerns that in held, if these are viable responses to what's now accepted as a constitutional right.
I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you today because I haven't read them.
Okay.
And so I wonder if I should, Pat, have you? I mean,
Oh.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I haven't got any
Okay.
good
that's all right.
good. I can prep that for you though. But Pat, do you know anything?
We heard one of those bills yesterday in Senate Natural Resources that's
Right.
being carried by Senator Galt, and I think is it Senate Bill 221? Is that the number?
Yeah, I believe that was.
Yeah. In any case, I have some serious concerns about that bill. I think it's well intended. I think it is a challenge for our state agencies to figure out how they're going to comply with the Held decision. I worked on the working group that was assembled by Department of Environmental Quality to figure out how that was going to unfold. And the bill that was offered yesterday, in my mind, was not a product of that effort. It was something slightly different. And in my mind, maybe missed the point on what needs to be assessed when it comes to greenhouse gases as called for by the Held decision. And instead of looking at cumulative effects and direct and indirect effects, it's very narrowly focused. So it uses the word proximate in terms of impacts, and that means on-site. And I think that's too narrowly focused. So I think there may be some things we can do to amend that bill and make it do a better job, or lay out the process for doing a better job for complying with the Held decision. But as it is now, I have some serious concerns.
That bill seemed to get more attention than the ones in the House, and I'm curious, do you think that's an indicator of it maybe being the kind of the lead bill or the lead response from Republican leadership to the court ruling on Hill?
Good question. I don't really have a good sense of that yet. I haven't seen the House bills. My understanding of at least one of the House bills, and I can't remember who's carrying it, is that it does a better job of kind of honestly trying to take the Hill decision and implement it under MIPA.
Okay.
And so I'm anxious to see that if it makes it out of the House. I think there's ways to do this, and I don't think it's so onerous for agencies that it's going to, completely hamstring their ability to do their MIPA compliance when it comes to any state action. But I think it also has to be kind of fair in how it addresses the conclusions that came out of that Hill decision.
Sure. Thank you.
I have an education question, I think probably for Melissa. You mentioned briefly a school nutrition bill that you're planning to bring. Could you talk a little bit more about like what you're hoping to do with that, what its
Yeah.
scope would be, how much you expect it to cost, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Currently, the bill that I am planning to run would eliminate the reduced price copay for families. So it's not a universal free lunch bill, but it would reduce or eliminate the reduced price copay. And it's still an LC because I'm also I'm trying to work across the aisle and find a way that maybe I could also add in some money back regarding if a district is buying local food or Montana food, and I don't yet have the price or what that would be, and so that's why it's still an LC. I'm still doing a little bit of research, but that would be the goal, is it would reduce or eliminate the reduced price and then also incentivize districts to buy local Montana food.
Thank you.
Minority Leader Sullivan, you were talking earlier about the income tax bills that the Republicans have proposed, how you feel like they're helping out the wealthy too much. And I was curious, obviously, I know that Speaker Lear's bill is coming up tomorrow for hearing, and I was just curious, is there anything that you guys do want to see done on the income tax front, or are you guys more so focused on property tax stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's not that we're not focused on income tax, it's just that the majority of Montanans, when we spoke to voters, were expressing major concern about the affordability of property taxes. And so that's why we have immediately out the gate brought our property tax relief bills, and we want to focus there first and foremost because that needs a solution right away. Of course, we want to dive into income tax as well and put our fingerprints on it. I will say outright that I am not a supporter of the governor's income tax plan, but maybe, who knows, maybe there's amendments to it. We also had Representative Carlin's circuit breaker bill, which does impact both income and property tax, and that has gone out to bypass the floor and it's gone to appropriations. So we are kind of mixing those two together with the three tax plan bills we do have. But our focus is first and foremost property tax relief, of course income tax as well. We'd like to see everybody be able to receive a benefit if there's an income tax plan that goes through and not just have it focus on the wealthiest Montanans, which is what we see as the proposal right now.
You don't have a standalone earned income tax credit or anything like that this time, or do you?
Senator Flowers may have an income tax bill.
Yeah, I have a bill draft request in now that I've been working on related to income tax, but I don't have, it's not a final product yet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just
Yeah.
just to follow on income tax real quick, if you're okay with that.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
I have the same follow-up, Eric. No
Yeah, I
worries.
wanted to ask about Mike Yakowicz's bill over at Senate 3. I think it's, gosh, I have the number here someplace.
Yeah.
203, I believe.
Sure.
I would, Republican income tax bill, kind of a similar to the Lear bill, would be kind of potentially an alternative to the governor's program. There is a $220 million a year fiscal note on that, and I was a little surprised to see both minority leaders as co-sponsors on that bill. Given that for years I've been hearing from your caucuses about worries that cutting income tax rates at the state level would ultimately set up a situation where the state defunds essential services.
Mhm.
So, can you talk a little bit about what you see in that bill and why your names are attached to that?
I can start if you want.
Go ahead.
It might not be a satisfying answer for you, but
I can cross follow-ups, yeah.
For me, I'm putting my name on that bill as a signal that, so what Yakowicz's does is it takes the bottom up in terms of the amount, as you know, so what is it,
Yeah.
up to $100,000? And it does not bring the top down. And me putting my name on that, I think, is kind of my way of signaling to the legislative community that if there was a preference, it would be on a plan that did that rather than the governor's plan. And so that was kind of my way of signaling where the House Democrats are at right now with income tax conversation. So maybe not as policy forward as you had hoped, but more a political signal
Yeah.
as to what we would like to see the
Yeah.
focus be.
Right, so just to make sure I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying, if you were queen of the world, would you support that bill as introduced? Are you worried about the fiscal note?
I mean, of course, yeah, and it's gonna go to approps, and we have to see where things land with all the, but I do know 200, what do you say, 220 million?
We're gonna get plus or minus
Okay,
10,
and the
yeah.
governor's is what, 800, 900
It's
million?
about, I think comparable numbers are about
Yeah.
350 a year.
Okay,
Yeah.
oh, is it 350?
Mhm.
Okay, well,
So
I
it's-
prefer
this
the
is-
one that I signed,
Okay.
yeah, but I don't know, or Pat can have his
Yeah.
maybe less political answer. I don't know.
In general, I would agree with kind of the rationale that Katie offered there. I think any income tax bill that we approve needs to be focused on the lower and middle income and less on the higher end. And so the bill that I'm working on kind of takes a similar approach. But I thought Senator Yakowicz's bill also was an example of a bill that focused more on lower and middle income and less on the high end. It does have a lower price tag, and I think that's important. 150 million a year is significant, and so I know the governor's bill was cast by our legislative fiscal folks as being potentially insolvent, I think, by 2029, or our budget would become insolvent by then. I think cutting that down to 200 would prevent that, so that was important to me. And certainly anything I'd bring forward would be in kind of in the same neighborhood where it wasn't going to break the bank.
Yeah, I think I have a follow-up on kind of the politics here, because
Sure.
I do think it's really interesting to see a bipartisan bill like this, and it is not the first time we've seen the GOP caucus split from the executive on this stuff, but Governor Gianforte had a press conference last week with Grover Norquist talking about how much of a priority this income tax cut is. What do you make of that kind of tension, and I guess how are you feeling about being, legislature seems coalesced around being against?
Yeah, I feel it's been tricky because pretty much every Republican I've spoken to about income tax bills are indicating that one will go. And no one is saying, at least on the Republican side to me, oh, we don't need to do that, we're not gonna have that, it's not a thing. And when I hear that commitment in their voices, I realize I need to get on something and try and make movement. And so then again, that's also in the political realm of why I signed on to that. It's like, if we're gonna be players in this and try and keep things focused on middle class, and I hear it's gonna happen, we're gonna do one, and we can't lead without it, like I've gotta jump into it and put my weight where I can. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Totally, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. There's that online question too, but I don't know, do you wanna keep going?
Nope,
Are you sure?
that's great. If Pat wanted to add anything.
No, I
feel free.
think that was well said. I
Okay.
agree completely.
Yes, yeah, that's my colleague, so I'll let it.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you all. Thank you for the availability. I wanted to ask about a couple of big education money adjacent proposals that dropped last week. The STARS Act seems to be sort of the banner school funding bill this session, at least on the GOP side, although it received a lot of bipartisan support and a lot of support in general at its first hearing. You guys have a lot of other measures in play, I think with like smaller chunks of money attached to them. Do you see the STARS Act as kind of the banner school funding action this legislative session? Does your caucus view that in the same light as I think a lot of GOP folks?
I can take that. I would say yes, but I do think it is also coupled with other things, right? We still have to have our inflationary increases because there are other things that are attached to that, different components in that inflationary increase that get funded. So the STARS Act does a couple of things that I think the school community, I know I speak for myself and my colleagues, are excited about. So it does increase some funding, and it takes some pressure off of what I alluded to on the student count and puts it more on the highly qualified educator payment piece. So I think specifically those smaller schools might see a little bit of relief with this, or just in the shift that it does. But the other piece of that bill is the advanced opportunities component that it has, as I alluded to, and just trying to incentivize districts for growing those opportunities for students. It does open up some avenues to increase beginning teacher wages in districts across the state. I think some of our smaller districts are a little bit concerned about what that looks like in terms of their budgets. But I think it does get the discussion going, and it does move the pieces in the right direction in terms of raising that pay, realigning things, and providing really robust opportunities for our students. So.
Just to follow up on that, so you said earlier you'd like to see the habitual 3% inflation, for the per student increase, right? The governor's position, we asked him why he's pursuing STARS instead of an A and B increase. He said he was worried that a flat A and B increase would end up putting too much money into administration instead of into teaching. You know, I see your face when I summarize that argument. Could you talk a little bit about how you think about that issue?
Yeah. I think for me, we have districts, there's 395 school districts in the state of Montana, and some of them have as few as 1 and 2 students in the entire district. And so I think when you're trying to balance what the base entitlement is with the inflationary rates and with incentives such as what we have in place now, the TEACH Act, or moving towards the STARS Act funding, you have to take into consideration all of those 365 districts, and we have an obligation under our state constitution to fund public education. So there's a lot of nuances to that funding formula, and it's not just about putting money into teacher salaries or admin salaries or inflationary pieces. So did that answer? I think in terms of the inflationary cap piece, it's in statute not to exceed that 3%. So when you come out of a year like we had in 2024, where inflationary rates are off the charts, it gets more and more expensive to keep the lights on in the building, let alone funding all the other components of all of the daily operations we have to provide for our students. So that's why we would support that inflationary increase.
Also on education funding, the big school choice bill, the MAPS program, I understand there's a lot of amendments heading that direction. Is there any way to make that bill palatable to on your side?
That's a great question. I think I've heard as well that there are many amendments coming. I've seen none of them, and I have very little information about what the amendments might look like. I tried to corner some of my friends across the aisle yesterday to get information, and all I was told was there's a lot of amendments coming. From my perspective, I think as Democrats we are opposed to diverting public funds to private schools, and so I don't think that there's really any appetite from Democrats to do anything with that bill, because in our minds it's going to remain a bad bill when it diverts public funds from public schools.
And I haven't looked, but is there a legal note on that bill? And
Yeah, as to my recollection, we did not have a fiscal note or any sort of that information during that hearing, but I would anticipate there will be something.
okay, I was curious because the proponent said this is totally in line with Espinoza, and
Yeah.
the opponent said
Said, no,
it's
it's not.
totally contrary, but we don't have an assessment from.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Should we go to Josh online, please?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So I guess my question is, and I don't know how much information you guys know about this right now, but a couple of national outlets have come out in the last hour saying that President Trump's preparing an executive order to abolish the Department of Education. Now, that's something presumably would take an act of Congress, but I mean, how important is the Department of Education for schools in Montana, and what could the impact be?
Let me see who wants to field that.
I can
Who
take
wants
it.
to take that? Thanks.
I'll take that. And well, as we've been alluding to all morning, the funding formula in the state of Montana is incredibly complex, and there's all kinds of different things. We do have some federal funding that would be affected by that, such as like Title I funding, special education funding. There are a variety of other federal grants, I think, out there. A lot of the school nutrition food programs fall under some federal guidelines. So the bulk of what we have is state funding, and then what is not funded at the state level that is mandated trickles down into our local taxpayers. But we do rely specifically on those Title I and special education programs. As a special ed director, we've had a lot of conversations about if this comes down the pipe. And so I think we're just along for the ride and follow along to figure out what our guidance is and what we need to do to keep going. I mean, I think there's been talk that they would restructure and move things like special education over to Department of Health and Human Services. So I think I know as much as you guys know, but it's something we definitely will be keeping our eye on. And I would say those are the biggest impacts to us in the state of Montana would be the funding for Title I services and special education, which if they're unfunded, you're still mandated to provide. In my world of special education, right, we're still mandated to provide those, and so it's going to fall on the local taxpayers is what's going to happen. So.
What portion of a typical district's budget are those Title I funds?
Ooh,
I know it's probably varies. But
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer because, like I said, we have the 395 school districts, so they all look a little different. There's two different types of Title I programs. There's school-wide and targeted assistance, so I think it just depends on everything from the socioeconomic status to the enrollment numbers of those
Can I
districts.
rephrase? In your district, what percentage of the school budget is Title I funds?
So I'm not employed directly by a school district.
okay.
I'm the
district you
director.
live
Well, it's got a pretty high socioeconomic status. I don't know the exact numbers. I could get those and
Okay.
try to follow up with
Yeah.
you, but
Thank you.
yeah, I'm more in the special ed world than the Title I world.
And then, can I ask a really easy question? Senator Flowers, you said that the Senate is still behind, and I would understand why a couple weeks ago, but why are you still behind?
I think that's a really good question for the president. He schedules bills, so, I don't know what he's got on his desk. I don't know what his tally is for what's come out of committee. I think we have lots of work to do, and hopefully he will get us moving.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hey, if we could stay on behind for a minute.
Stay behind.
Well, just stay behind. I'm curious. There was, I saw Adam Durek in Ethics Committee yesterday. The council that's been hired to sort of manage this this way forward seemed to indicate to committee members that they might want to sort of allow him to enter some discussions with Joe Mell, the attorney for Senator Ellsworth, before kind of making hard plans for their meeting on Friday. And I'm wondering, would you be amenable to or would you see it as beneficial to, you know, to have him, to have the ethics committee maybe enter into a settlement that they could bring forth to the Senate and kind of wrap this up early? Do you think there's a possibility there for something like that? Maybe with some conciliatory statement, and and maybe an agreed ruling by the Senate that just put this thing to bed.
Yeah, I think their first job is to fact find. So if I think, if it was possible for them to agree on a set of facts quickly, that they felt adequately captured the circumstances surrounding Senator Ellsworth's activities, and they could do that quickly and bring it to the floor, and we could move on to some kind of fair and agreed upon bipartisan solution for moving forward, that would be ideal. And if Mr. Dewar can get the committee there and the committee can unanimously get to that point, I think it would be a win for all of us. I think the sooner we can get focused on the business of the legislature and not on, for example, this ethics investigation, the sooner we're going to get to doing the real work for Montanans.
I guess if I could follow that up, when you talk about being behind, do you feel that this ethics investigation has kind of been a drag on process overall in the Senate?
I'd have to agree. I think that kind of looms, and again, you'd have to ask the president how it's affecting his ability to schedule bills for hearing on the floor, but it feels that way. So if you're feeling it, I would have to agree. On a certain degree, we're feeling it as well.
Thanks.
Other questions? Good to go. All right, thank you
All right,
all.
thanks.
I appreciate all of you.